Theater Talk. I must have the floor. This is Theater Talk. I'm Susan Haskins. So there's a production of the Rocky Horror Show opening next week, and we know it's extraordinary because of its cast, two of whom are with us tonight, and here to introduce them, my co-host, Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
It is certainly an eclectic cast at the spiffy new production of the Rocky Horror Show, and we wanted to sort of try to find the two extremes in that cast, and I think we've pulled them together tonight.
Oh, we got extremes much beyond this.
We're more alike than you'll ever know.
Oh, well, we are joined by our old friend Lea DeLaria, the Broadway star, the stand-up comic, the scat singer, the author of Leah's book of Rules for the World, the outspoken lesbian comic. Welcome to Theater Talk again.
Thank you, Mikey. Good to be back.
And on the opposite...
Up till that moment, I thought you were introducing me.
I was going to say, on the opposite side of it, we have Dick Cavett, who, if I'm not mistaken, Dick, you're not a lesbian, correct? That's
Not in the, as Germans say, not in this moment. But I'm open to all experiences in life.
Dick Cavett, the famous talk show host, television personality, television intellectual.
Oh, for God's sake, don't hang that one on me.
Well, I'm going to ask you something.
I can prove anybody who thinks I'm an intellectual has not really seen one.
Well, I'm going to make
They
you
probably think Bill Buckley's in one.
I'm going to make you prove it tonight. Could you please describe for me the plot of the Rocky Horror Show?
Yes. It's two young kids from Grover's Corners are hoping to get married. Oh, the Rocky Horror Show. I thought you said our town. Our show is sort of our town for weirds.
That's right.
It's got all the elements. I might be able to get through some of the plot for you, but please don't ask me the meaning until you ask me back sometime.
I want you to put it in its historical context.
Well, so far, no, everyone's refrained from using grand guignol, and they've said about everything else about it. It's got a lot of violence, and it's got a lot of humor, and none of the violence is upsetting to anybody except Leah, who gets whacked with a buzzsaw. Oh, I shouldn't have revealed the end of the first act. Can we go back?
Everybody knows. It's like, oh no, I told him Maria gets married. You know, it's like everybody knows that Eddie gets killed in this show.
Oh, Eddie. In fact, two very young, wholesome kids have a flat tire. Not an unfamiliar idea, is it, in a plot? And there is a dark castle nearby, and they go there to try to use the phone. And from that point on, life becomes hilariously and dramatically and funnily holy hell. And the audience has the best time. If this show had opened already and they were saying, what a mess, a good
You're saying every night, right?
if they've said that, in another world, if that were true, they would have to have said, but the audience at the end would absolutely cheerfully sit through it again right then. It is a splendid production, by the way. I think some people are rather startled by the impressiveness and the mechanics.
Well, no expense spared. I mean, this is a really spiffy new production. Except your when you're working for the Roth family, you have to work for scale. That's because we know how poor Daryl Roth is.
Are they notorious?
No, we love Daryl Roth.
No, we're just playing.
They seem nice.
We love Daryl Roth and her son Jordan, who are producing
he's
the
the
show.
Best. He's fantastic.
If I say enough, maybe I'll get a paycheck.
Yeah, maybe you're going to raise it. Maybe you get a building out of them. That's what they don't ask for money. Ask for buildings from the Roth. Leah, did you grow up watching this movie? Were you a Rocky cultist?
I was a Rocky freak. Yeah, I've seen it. I stopped counting it 46 times. So, but I stopped going when they started throwing toast and rice and yelling so much that I couldn't actually watch the movie. So I'm not sure if it was the movie or Susan Sarandon in her bronze slip. But it was one of those things that attracted me. And I kept going back again and again.
Her in her bronze slip.
Dick, how could you forget Susan Sarandon in a bra and a slip?
Well, see, I was out of work.
He wasn't a lesbian then.
I guess.
I was unemployed then, and I went to the show to get the toast and rice.
Now, wait, they throw stuff at you guys, too, here. I mean, you even have a sort of a grab bag of throwaways that you can pay $20 for.
On Halloween, I didn't know there was that much toilet. There was more toilet paper on our stage than there was in the entire country of Mexico. You know, it was unbelievable, the rolls of toilet paper that kept flying onto the stage before I
the
came
impact of
out
that
in that
joke's just-
wheelchair.
Don't be politically correct. Mary.
I try not to be whenever.
You can say whatever you want about this. All right, now when you guys were putting the show together, you must have thought that, because of what it is, that you're going to get some wacky audience responses. Were you prepared for the way people talk back to you and yell at the show and throw things at you?
Well, Leah probably was, being familiar with it more. I was not entirely, but one of the reasons I took
bothered
the...
to tell you, did they?
No, they
Did
never
anybody
said
tell-
anything. I thought it was just go read them off and leave. But the fun for me, and in many cases for the audience, is the shouting out, some of which are traditional, some of which are invented on the spot, some of which are actually witty. And I usually handle them very delicately and with great class, like saying, "Shut up, you big tub of guts."
My favorite is when they go, "Hey, Dick." Don't you
Oh,
like
yeah,
that?
that's good.
That's the
Dick.
wittiest one. Hey,
Yeah.
Dick.
He's so
Dick,
great.
in what sense you want to say it? And then they figure that's pandering. So I go back to
So
your big
great.
tub of guts, which, as you know, is from Importance of Being Earnest.
He's so great. He's so, it's so stand up. It's so wonderful to see you doing stand up again. And he just, you know, I went in when they originally called me in for Magenta, and I really, really wanted to do Eddie. And Dr. Scott was just kind of a big bonus. But the next time, if I'm going to gender bend, I'm going to try and take your role, because you're having so much
And you're
fun
gonna do
in that
Eddie.
role.
And one
I
night,
would love to do that.
one night they were shouting out during one of Leah's scenes, and I heard this. I had just turned to go get to my next entrance, and I heard this voice say, "I wish the director would let me answer you."
That was me. That would have been me. Some guy yelled at me. I was like, oh, I wish the director would let me talk to you.
Now,
You Dr. Scott's little German accent.
Now, people, of course, know this really as the movie, because the original Broadway production of the Rocky Horror Show only lasted about 13 performances, I think.
Yeah, why?
Because it was 1974, I don't think people were ready for what it was saying back in those days in the United States and England. You know, they have a different sensibility. It's like Chicago, when Chicago first came out. We just weren't ready for it in this culture. You know, we were prudes back then.
So what is it saying?
What is it saying?
What is it saying?
You handle this one, Leah.
Well, it's kind of like Marlo Thomas saying, "Free to be you and me," isn't it, Michael?
No way.
It's a little like that.
I think Dr. Jonathan
in a much
Miller
more
would have a
interesting
hard
way,
time.
right.
Trying to figure. Well, let me try to give it. I mean, isn't it a sort of a satire or a parody of the kind of I think they called it the glimmer rock movement that was taking off in the
Glitter rock.
glitter rock movement
Glitter
in the 70s? How's that work?
I just am laughing at Glimmer Rocks right now. You know,
Mr. Hip.
like
I didn't
Iggy
know
Stardust. I'm sorry. Like,
No, but there was this movement at the time, though, of
Yeah.
these, the rockers who were David Bowie type. They were transvestites,
at least he said Bowie.
androgynous.
At least he said Bowie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but it's also, you know, it's also the satire of those B-50 movies,
Right.
you know, and then they took that idea, and all of that was coming out of England, so it really is a very British sensibility. In England, transvestitism has always been funny. It's always been a part of their culture. They do those Christmas pantomimes every year.
Those
and the
old boy boarding
the whole
schools
thing
that they
around
go
that,
to.
the little boy boarding school, all of that, you know. That's why so many gay people live in England, I think. But in there, it's part of their culture. And here, it's really was still something a little weird and dirty and odd back then when it came over, except in LA, where it did really, really well.
I thank you
that's
for
LA.
springing a weird memory jog.
Uh-oh.
A very
This could be a
Acid.
long show.
No, this was a very acid-tongued professor at the Yale Law School, which I did not go to, I hasten to add, but someone we all know did, didn't she? And I got in time to hear him have a student ask, "Sir, what is the meaning of the phrase distinction without a difference in law?" And he thought for a merest moment and said, "Well, it's sort of like, well, do you want an example? Englishmen and homosexuals." That's what you call acidy.
That's good. That's good.
You know what's fun, and partly again my job, not to bore you with talk about Rocky Horror Show or anything, but
It's only where you're drawing your paycheck from these days, Dick. You might want to promote it a
They're
little
counting the words out there right now. There's a moment when I step out to go around to my place, and the show has just started, and there's a heavy rock beat, and the house is dark, and people are beginning to get the rhythm of it. And I think this certainly beats nightclub or anything. This sound is so important, and I'm going to be in this, and I'm going to go out there and face I don't know what the hell. And I like that. I like it more as the days go by.
You're facing a bunch of crazy people who have no lives, who have seen this movie 20,000 times and know all the lines.
Not necessarily. You'd be so surprised. Now, you came on Halloween, which was a really wild show, but like on Sunday, we have families come in with their kids, husbands, wives, and their kids.
This is a
10,
family show?
11,
You're selling
12,
this as a family
13,
show?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Is
you'd
this
be
a family show?
Midwestern, yeah, the Addams
They are
family.
coming and they're having a ball. They have their little church outfits on, and then they're coming to the Rocky Horror Show.
It's surprising. Grant Wood tried to paint our audience there.
I don't know. It's so if I bring my children to this show.
The thing you have to realize, it's
No.
been a part of our culture for 25 years. I grew up with this movie. So did they.
Quarter of a century.
A quarter of a century. Oh my God, you just made me feel so old.
It has something. It certainly has something.
Right, but aside from Susan Sarandon's Nighty that you like, can you just sort of try to put your finger on what it is about something like this that keeps bringing people back to it? Why they become obsessed with something like this? Why you learn all the lines? Why they go to midnight showings all the time? Why they identify with these characters? I mean,
I doubt that Freud and Dr. Jonathan Miller could tell us. For sure. But some of it, don't you think, is the, what's the new trendy phrase, interactive theater.
Right.
There's some of it is that. I doubt that anyone would go to a movie that many times unless there were this community event that takes place each time, and it's slightly different each time. So.
I think in the United States it started out as a rebellious act. I think with my generation, which it was my generation, it started out as a rebellion. And you went to the movie, and a lot of people went to the movie. It was before it was really interactive. I mean, it was we did the time warp in the aisles. We did, a couple things like that. But it was more about how wild it was and how if our parents knew we were here. Absolutely.
And the shocking
then,
image, more so then, of a man wearing panties and garter belts and 6-inch gold
Which
heels.
now seems so commonplace.
So
but in those
commonplace when you
days,
see it on Jerry Springer every day.
Oh,
Plus,
yeah.
he has no teeth.
Now you, see
know,
it
so.
you see it in the Senate every day. The world has changed.
well, isn't it now? It's so funny, though. I guess this happens with many of these things that are once seen as radical and subversive. The more familiar we become with them, the longer they're around. It's now sort of putting on an old sweater, the Rocky Horror Show.
Yeah.
There's a comfort level of sitting through this show now and getting a kick out of it.
And that's why they're coming. I
Yeah.
mean, they're coming for that.
And there are a few freaks who see it as the Fantastics for the bizarre.
Right.
very good.
I got one of them with my unerring skill at choosing women out of audiences. There's a bit where I'm supposed to get a lady dance during the famous time warp number, and I grabbed a woman who had some paint on because Christopher Ashley, who directed it, made a note one day, said, the people you're selecting, all the dancers pick someone, look for the ones who are eager to be up there. So I got her. She was unusual, and we danced for a bit, and I kind of did something like this Jackie Gleason move, and when I turned back, her head was nearer my buckle, my belt.
She was a little too eager.
And then she came on out of that moment, and then I believe went outside and trashed the lobby. Looking for me, according to
Yeah, she was asked to lead.
She was ejected.
We haven't had a lot. We've had that, and then we get like, I love this. The other day, I guess it was 2 days ago, there was a high school from Albany there. They'd taken a bus down with their theater teacher, and there was like 25, 30 kids from Albany screaming for our autographs. I just loved it. Yeah. Because to me, that it says exactly how we've changed and how the view of this play has changed. Right. When I was in high school, or like when Jessica Lange came and brought her 13-year-old, I'm sorry. My mom would have stood spread eagle in front of that door when I was 13 years old to stop me from going to see this play. But it's changed.
Oh,
it's changed. It's become way more acceptable.
If I'd seen it when I was in high school, I'd have been 40 the next day.
right. I never saw it.
You were always 40.
I'm being always 40 myself.
You're old in the womb.
You do have quite an interesting cast. Aside from the two of you, you have Joan Jett, the heavy metal rocker, I believe.
Yes. Heavy metal, no, but nice try. She started in the punk movement. I would call her hardcore.
She's a perfectly nice woman.
Charming, and you've got
Lead singer from the Runaways.
Alice Ripley, who's sort of your wonderful Broadway ingenue, and
My roommate.
and your
And top
My dressing roommate.
Are you corrupting her moral specs?
No one, Alice needs no corruption, trust me.
And she's not without a wicked sense of humor.
She is a wicked sense of humor. Very fun and funny in the show.
Well, what did you all make of each other when you got together for the first time? This mixed
I
bag
made
of
that
people.
they were all younger than I was. And then when I got beyond that thought, almost every cast has a couple of clunkers in it.
And they would be here.
I'm not sure this one does. It's always said, 'cause everybody sort of agrees on who isn't making it and so on. Right. And almost anything I've been in, you never get perfection. But this is the gypsies, if they don't mind being called that, they're called the Phantoms in the show.
Usually only
They're
called that by
dancing.
Liza Minnelli, I think. Dick. Other than that.
Is that a Liza term? Wait, is this dating me? Let's go back to silent pictures. Well, I don't know. The Luntz always called them the gypsies.
Let's call them the Phantoms. We call them Phantoms
They're
in the
professional dancers, singers, actors.
Swings. We call them
show.
swings.
Gypsies. That's why we lock our doors. We're afraid they're going to steal from us.
They're running around with that wolf bane all the time.
Well, there's a Noel Coward song that has the line, "Stop being gallant and don't be such a bore. Pack up your talent, there's always plenty more. And when you lose hope, take dope and lock yourself in. When you lose hope, take dope and lock yourself in the John. Why must the show go on? Oh, mammy." Well, these are, there isn't, as he well knew, always plenty more talent. But there was certainly enough to fill this show.
What was it like? You know, I mean, you've been around Broadway. You're Broadway hand. You know how it works. To have somebody like Dick Cavett, who you've done a couple of shows there, but an icon like Dick Cavett come into the Rocky Horror Show.
I just like to sit next to Dick. At any given situation, I sit. That was an odd thing for me to say, but I like to sit next to Dick at any time.
Let's hope no one's listening
No one's
carefully.
listening. Someone can edit that moment and ruin me.
What a thing.
I
I didn't
like
get-
That lesbian act is over with.
But I like
on to the next gimmick.
You may,
He's always got the funniest thing to say. He's
You may
always
call me
doing-
Richard from
Richard
now.
from now on. I'll call you
less
Richard.
trouble. I have
won't
the
let me
same
go.
feeling. I would have said the same thing about her. And we, like two kids who know each other in school, we make each other laugh in ways that are sort of...
I'm the only person that knows his references. Because they're all 20 except for me and Dick.
It's nice when that,
Like they would have gone, the Luntz?
Wait, are you,
They would have. Trust me.
wait a minute, Leah, are you on the upper edge of the age scale with me?
But you must have
Don't
grown
tell
up.
any casting
You
directors.
must have grown up watching him on TV, as I did, the famous talk shows. I mean, he was
Couldn't
the epitome of New York. Well, for probably like you and me, we both came from outside of New York. He seemed to me the epitome of New York sophistication.
Absolutely.
We're talking about you,
Absolutely.
Dick.
Yes, we are.
I would have thought
And
you
then
were-
I met him. So there that went.
I just can't hear my name now without being self-conscious. Would Mr. Dick help?
Thank you.
Let's ask
I
this
just
lady.
like
How
to
do you
sit next to Mr. Dick. It's still bad, Dick. I don't know what to do.
I know. When I first went to the Deep South, from which my wife springs, when the black
lovely and
help
talented
would
Carrie.
say
Carrie
Mr.
Nye.
Dick, Carrie Nye, when the black help would say Mr. Dick, I always found it so strange. I felt like I was in Gone with the Wind or something. And it's a nice thing in a way, except it points to an ugly history,
Yes,
doesn't
it
it?
certainly-
But
Yeah, I was just thinking about all the television sets that just clicked off.
you know, I heard something too.
There goes our funding right out the
We
window.
just lost every borough outside
Thanks
of
a lot,
Manhattan.
Mr. Dick. There you
Oh,
go.
no.
Jumping into a Broadway show to do 8 performances a week, has it been a challenge for you? I mean, you did Into the Woods, but that was about 10 years ago.
Yeah, I don't. It is a bit of a physical challenge to anybody, whether you have 2 lines or not. The getting up for performance and being dropped down again, and getting up and down, and then I'm told that this very time, the last weeks of preview, is crazy time. No matter how well organized you are, and everybody is, and people start to get panicky, and a lot of stuff has to be fixed and so on. But happily, the show, even if they go tonight, which they'd be wise to do, since I tend to be unusually funny, why did I say that? The gods will fix me now.
It's going to be a flat performance for you, pal.
It's really dispensing happiness. Doesn't that sound like something you'd say on the old Virginia Graham show? To the audience, so they are having one hell of a good time.
Why'd you do it?
I did it because at first I wasn't going to do it, and I thought maybe that isn't the craziest idea. The narrator, I'd seen what he is in the movie. He's sort of off in a room in Oxford somewhere or something. But in this case, dealing directly with the audience,
idea.
which creatures like us have been forced to do and enjoy doing, is fun. And it really is a pleasure to do it.
Oh,
It's hard to go back to your material in a way. That's something I may have to solve yet. You know, when you're heckled in your act and then you deal with them and it gets laughs, and then you have to say, so anyway, we were trying to get on the bus, and your act suddenly sounds stiff. And
well, could you give him some pointers and help him out here? I mean, you're stand-up comedy. You know what it's like to fight an audience
I don't have to
when they
give him
try
any
to,
pointers. He's doing a fantastic job. That was my disappointment, was when I was told that I wasn't going to be allowed to do that. Like,
well,
what?
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was going to ask you. You're confined. You've got lines that you have to stick to.
Character. I'm not allowed to acknowledge the. I can as Eddie. And bring them into the song, but I'm not. If they say something, I have to keep barreling through. Except that one day, I just had to say something. It just sometimes it just bubbles. You know, it's the stand-up thing. It just bubbles up inside of you. And
the you who gets blamed for it later is not the you who is out there as a performer. That's what's interesting.
But Chris Ashley's such a fantastic director. This is my third show with him, and he really understands that. He does understand that, and I really try to control that muscle, that stand-up muscle, when I'm acting.
Well, you're an actress, though. I mean, you know the
I try to
difference.
lose that muscle. I think we actually talked about it on the show once before, that stand-up muscle. I really try to lose that when I'm on stage, because it's a hard thing to have and be able to act.
I hadn't heard you use that term, but I think of it. Somebody asked me the other day, what's like nightclub versus? And I said, you use different muscles.
Yeah.
So that's really a good image for it.
Yeah.
I think, if knowing Chris as I do, if you get hit square in the face with a roll of toilet paper,
he's going to expect me to say something.
Yeah, okay.
Where did you just get back from? Mexico?
Well,
I can hear it now.
In every show that I've done with him, there's been basically a toilet paper incident like that, where I have said something.
Toilet paper everywhere.
That's for lack of a better phrase, a toilet paper incident where I've had to make a little remark. So
you call it the tissue issue.
The tissue issue.
See, we made each other laugh, and nobody else.
See, we love that. We'll keep each other endlessly entertained.
She suggested we do Laurel and Hardy sometime.
It would be fun.
That would be cute. That would be cute.
Have us back then.
We'll dress up and we'll do it for Halloween next year.
Rustle up some derbies.
We're going to plunge into your book for a second to plug that.
Sure.
Do you have a book we can plug of yours? No.
Cavett. Harket Brace Jovanovich.
that's a wonderful book.
1974. 78, I think it was.
But all the stories you had to tell.
You can get it on the internet. There are always a few for sale from those who want to pass it on to others.
There you go.
Oh, you know, I want to. Do you have any? Before we talk about Leah's book, we can do it. You know, Steve Allen just died.
Yes.
Do you have any words on that? Did you have much
Yeah, I was
interaction
very
with him?
sorry. I told the LA Times that it was as if several people had died.
Yep.
I hope I never have to hear anybody say he was great versatility again, because I know he was sick of it too, and it was the word that always came up. But he was many wonderful things, and until his apparent dotage when he was out campaigning against the scurrility in the media, a part of his life I'd rather not know about, he was a fabulous talent. Once on a live show, in an audience with a mic, for some reason a woman said, this is 30 years ago or more, "Hey Steve, you know, I always eat my greens." And he said, "Well, you must be very popular on the golf course. Now, what about..." Nobody laughed, but I did, and I thought, I like this guy.
He could have played the narrator in
And
the
when
show.
Groucho Marx met him, he didn't say hello. He said, "You're too damn good, Alan." And that was one of his cherished
That would
compliments.
be a great compliment.
Woo.
Yeah. Your book is Leah's
book
of Rules for the World.
Yes.
What are you telling us in this book?
Modest title.
Yeah. What
modest
orders are you issuing to us in this book?
They're all in there. There are 10 rules that I have for the world that, you know.
Does it make the world a better place, or are you a more
Well, it makes a better place for me.
satisfied?
You know,
It's a lot of
which I think is important.
a lot of dating tips.
Yeah, there's dating tips in there. I've rewritten the 10 Commandments for modern day. It's just a collection of essays and, you know, little
Illustrated.
ideas. And oh yes, I do cartoons that are in there, but I'm the world's worst cartoonist, and that's
And yet
that's part of the
you
fun.
portray yourself very
It looks just like me.
Yes, yes.
Looks just like me. Sitting there holding my vibrator. That's me.
Have you read that?
And
Have you
holding
read
it-
this book, Dick?
Holding it in a witty way. That's
Of
not
course
so
I
easy.
am.
That's right. All right, guys. Listen, if you're half as funny on stage as you are on this show, you'll be at the Circle of the Square for a long time, and I trust you are.
We'll see you there 43 times. won't we?
Once was it was an
I just
interesting
wanna
show,
see you
but
doing
once
the time warp once.
you are going to be waiting.
Time warp.
You're going to be
once.
waiting for Godot,
Stand
my
up
dear,
and
by
do
the
it
time
with me
you
right
see
now. Come on, Michael. Come on. It's just a jump to the left. Come on. We're going to get him to do this yet. Come on. It's just a jump to the left.
left.
Then a left.
I
Left,
feel like-
Michael. Your other left.
I feel
and then
as-
a step to the
See you next
right.
time.
I feel as
Next time on
This is a
Theater Talk.
culture show.
I feel as stiff as Dick
Good
Cavett.
night. Good night.
I didn't even get a chance to moonwalk on the table.
See, white men can't dance.
That's right.
Good night.
Leah DeLaria, you're never coming back again on Theater Talk, but thanks for being our
You
guest
said
tonight.
that last time.
Dick Cavett, it's a pleasure to see you.
Thank you,
Great to have you
sir.
here.
It was a pleasure to see you and to listen to you and to see your terpsichore attempted.
Thank you very much for being our guest tonight on Theater Talk.
Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Friedrich Loew Foundation, the Corey and Bob Donnelly Charitable Fund, the Eleanor Naylor Dana Charitable Trust, the Lucille Lortel Foundation, John Jerome and Christopher McDowell, and public funds from the New York State Council on the Arts, a state agency.
Playbill Online is the official website of Theater Talk and the home of the Playbill Club, providing information and opportunities for theater lovers. We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you and good night.